YouTube, it's Tone, back with another one for you. So, this document here is something that I would send. I haven't sent it. I'll tell you if I'm talking about something that I haven't done, but nothing that I tell you is some shit that I would not do because you can't be scared in this. And when you start to study, you know that this is all real, and so this is all code. This is all constitutional elements. Everything's real here, verifiable information. So it's not my personal opinion on any of this shit here. But the point of sending an affidavit along with any of your A4Vs accepted for values and things like that is if you look at it like a game of chess, what you're doing here is you're forcing them into a position to where they would have to rebut anything along with your presentment, right? They would have to rebut it with actual facts and law saying that what you're saying is wrong. So you put them in a position where they cannot rebut the affidavit, and 30 days after you send it, this is going to stand as fact. This actually becomes law, and the judgment is yours at that point. So you can bring this into court if you ever had to, and you would win because this would be the only piece of evidence that would be actually allowed. Anything else would be hearsay at that point. So what this says here is affidavit that all accounts are prepaid. So essentially what you're saying here is that you swear under the penalty, or you affirm that everything here is true to the best of your knowledge, and then you give them an opportunity to rebut it at that point. So what this says is an affidavit that all accounts are prepaid, which they are. Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress. The ownership of all property is in the state. That's when your property is titled with the state. So your car, your house, all that. If it says the state of on it, then it's not yours. It's never been yours. That's why you have to pay taxes on it, because you're the mere user. So the ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by the virtue of government, i.e. law, amounting to mere user. And use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. So it goes into a state trust. You can get your allodial title and things like that. I'll go into that in a video at some point later on. So here, Congressional Record, March 9th, 1933, House Resolution 1491, page 83. Under the new law, the money is issued to the banks in return for government obligations, bills of exchange, draft notes, trade acceptances, and bankers' acceptances. That's the A4V. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar. So the debt, dollar for dollar, is discharged because it is backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and on the other property of the people of the nation. Title 18, Clause 8. Obligation or other security of the United States defined. The term obligation or other security of the United States includes all bonds, certificates of indebtedness, national bankruptcy currency, Federal Reserve notes, Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons, United States notes, Treasury notes, gold certificates, silver certificates, fractional notes, certificate of deposit, bills, checks, or drafts for money drawn by or upon authorized officers of the United States, stamps and other representatives of value of whatever denomination issued under any act of Congress, and canceled United States stamps. Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the United States, House Joint Resolution 192. The term obligation means Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve banks and national bank associations. Title 31, Clause 3123, makes a statutory pledge of the United States government to payment of obligation and interest on the public debt. So all of the public debt is the obligation of the United States. That's what that says there. So here it says, Title 31, Clause 3123, payment of obligation and interest on the public debt. The faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender principal and interest on the obligations of the government issued under this chapter. The Secretary of the Treasury shall pay interest due or accrued on the public debt. As the Secretary considers expedient, the Secretary may pay in advance interest on the public debt by a period of not more than 1 year, with or without a rebate of interest on the coupons. Therefore, the government pledges to pay government obligations, which Federal Reserve notes are, and pay them with Federal Reserve notes, which is legal tender. Taxes and all bills associated with corporations are all government obligations, which they must pay when we accept them for value and return them to the government that has an obligation to settle the debt dollar for dollar. It is a fact. Title 31, Clause 3130 further delineates its definition, a portion of the total public debt which is held by the public as the net public debt. Clause 3130, annual public debt report. So again, that's just going further into detail as to how and what the obligations are of the United States. And so these are all facts here. You can verify them. Go ahead and look up the codes and all that stuff here. That's why I'm including them for you. So general rule, honored before June 1st on each calendar year after 1993, the Secretary of the Treasury shall submit a report to the Committee on Ways and Means of the House Representatives and the Committee on Finance of the Senate on 1. The Treasury's public debt activities, and 2. The operations of the Federal Financing Bank. For whatever reason we cannot associate with their actions or reasons they did so, we may benefit, we are beneficiaries. The government are trustees. Trustees pay debts, beneficiaries do not. Really that simple. That's how you can recoup all the payments that you made throughout the year with the OID, because you're not obligated to pay anything. The government is. Really that simple. Thus, government obligations are not taxable. These obligations of the United States under Title 31, 3124, exempt from taxation. A. Stocks and obligations of the United States government are exempt from taxations by a state or political subdivision of a state. The exemption applies to each form of taxation that would require the obligation, the interest on the obligation, or both to be considered computing a tax, except 1. A non-discriminatory franchise tax or another non-property tax instead of a franchise tax imposed on a corporation, and 2. An estate or inheritance tax. B. The tax status of interest on obligations and dividends, earnings, and other income from evidences of ownership issued by the government or an agency, and the tax treatment of gain, loss from the disposition of those obligations and evidences of ownership is decided under the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, 21 U.S.C. 1. An obligation that the Federal Housing Administration has agreed under a contract made before March 1st, 1941 to issue at a future date has the tax exemption privileges provided by the authorizing law at the time of the contract. The subsection does not apply to obligations and evidences of ownership issued by the District of Columbia, a territory or possession of the United States, or a department, agency, instrumentality, or political subdivision of the district, territory, or possession. Okay? And I highly recommend you guys go ahead and find all these codes in the U.S. code and all that, because they definitely freaking apply. Because when you're dealing with the government on anything in the public, you're gonna have to use their code. You don't even have to always use their code per se, but you will but you're gonna have to use the verbiage at least. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to get familiar with the code, even if you're not gonna use the code. So say you don't use 26 USC, but you'll use the verbiage of what 26 USC says a person is. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. So that's all good to know. Okay, so the Constitution does not give we the people rights. It forbids the government to ignore the God-given rights of the people. So your rights don't come from a piece of paper. The paper only allows your rights, which are not tangible, but it puts them into a tangible form when you put them onto paper in order for it to apply to a corporate structure or a fictional realm, if you will, right? So basically your rights don't come from that piece of paper. There's something that already freaking existed. They came from the creator and the contract that you signed before you came into this realm, right? So you already have a contract to be here in the first place. You didn't get thrown into this fucking realm and have these people be like, oh, good luck, we're gonna throw you in with the wolves. No, you absolutely made a choice to come in here. That's what free will is. That's the only universal law, is do no harm. I mean, you can clarify the law in 3 words: do no harm. And then you have the free will aspect of that. So you didn't just come and get thrown in here. So there's nobody to blame but yourself for the way that everything's going. Know that. So your Constitution does not give we the people rights. It forbids the government to ignore the God-given rights of the people, as seen in the 9th Amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. In addition, the 10th Amendment, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. There is no law to discourage the people from creating credit instruments. In fact, by the 14th Amendment, Clause 4, we need to. We must accept for value the debt instruments, legal tender of the United States. As long as the debt exists, the democracy exists. The Republican form of government, the United States of America, can only come back when the debt is gone. Since Federal Reserve notes as legal tender are debt notes, an insufficient number exists for their repayment in kind. We will not cover the interest owed using Federal Reserve notes to pay debts. It only increases the government obligation on debt by their creation. So you see how they created the laws in order to trap everybody into their bullshit, because you can never pay interest on fake money when they only gave you enough to borrow in the first place. So it's like, okay, so you gave me $1, but I owe you $1.10. Only $1 freaking exists of that certain currency. Where the fuck am I going to get that other 10 cents from? So then you have to borrow the money back again to pay the 10 cents, and then you got to pay the interest on that money again. So it's a vicious cycle that everybody's getting into here. This shit is crazy. So you guys have to learn how to do your A4Vs, except for value and things like that, because that's what you should be using, not fucking Federal Reserve notes. So you guys should get really comfortable doing your own bookkeeping, because when you allow this third party in, that's when you become subject to all of their fucking nonsense. Straight up, really that simple. So here, oh man. All right, so here it says, as it is a fact that all property in the United States as a result of the March 9th, 1933 Act is under the ownership of the United States and or its designee, the currency is underwritten by the U.S. Treasury notes, bills, and or obligations. It is impossible for me to be held liable for the government's obligations. The unconstitutionality of said act is expressed in Congress's own words. A. Since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. These proclamations give force to the 470 provisions of federal law. These hundreds of statutes delegate to the president extraordinary power exercised by Congress, which affect the lives of the American citizens in a host of all-encompassing manners. This vast range of powers taken together confer enough authority to rule this country without reference to normal constitutional processes. Senate Report 95 through 549, July 24th, 1973. Therefore, as per above, let the trustees settle the claim for and which I do hereby give my permission. I do not declare my willingness to offset public debt by accepting and returning for value my private debts that created new currency into circulation and indebted the government thereby. And then so at the last little thing here, what it is just basically showing what your what the bottom part is going to look like. So drafted by yourself, and then who did appear before me, and that's all going to be for the notary there. You got the room for the seal at the bottom, right? And you go ahead and send that along with any of your A4Vs that you do. You can even bring that shit into court, and if you're going to approach the matter in a commercial format, which I think everybody should get comfortable doing, you know, treating it like a business transaction. You know, you could bring affidavits like this in there to file as evidence, and they're gonna be fucking forced to have to shut that the fuck down, straight up. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play the game. When you start to understand the foundational principles of this, those always remain the same. It's commerce. It's commerce. It's commerce. Remember that. So anytime you're dealing with these people, you're dealing with them just like any other business. So don't go in there scared. They can't do shit to you. You know, they're going to make it seem like they can, but there's nothing that they can do that we can't do. You know what I'm saying? So if you're willing to put somebody in their place, definitely get in there and do that. You're going to feel better about yourself, and you're going to definitely help the world like that. You know what I mean? Because 1 leads to 2, and 2 to 100, and then 2 to the whole country. So you know what it is. So that's what I got for you for now. Until we meet again.